What's up, everybody? Welcome to Production Music Live. My name is Guido. I'm actually over from Cat and Beats, and today we are going to be talking about frequency masking. I'm going to give you two powerful tips and working methods to combat frequency masking, but they're quite powerful, so use them sparingly. Otherwise, you can get a track that will sound too clinical. I'll show you what I mean in a bit. So, first and foremost, what is frequency masking? It's quite easy to understand. For instance, if you have a bass line and a bass drum, let's just pretend that your bass drum is really heavy over at 50 hertz, and you really like that it has that big thud, but when the bass line plays a note over at 50 hertz with the G sharp, the bass line and the kick drum, they just kind of lose power together. So what you can then do is accentuate the kick drum via taking down some of that frequency on the bass drum, on the bass guitar, so that when the kick drum hits, then it will sound fatter. Okay, so you basically make room for other frequencies to come through where the other frequencies are dominant. All right, so let's just take that theory to the test. I have a extremely ridiculously fat drum track. Are you ready? I don't know if any of you ever had a drum lesson, but that is pretty much the first groove you are taught, and it sounds hilariously funny to me. Then we have the snare, and then here's the hi-hat. So let me just rename that for you guys. So we have this little drum groove, which is obviously nice and amateur. And instead of immediately going to the volume knob because the hi-hat's too loud or the snare is too loud, but what we're going to do is we're going to immediately go to the EQ8. And the trick to use is extremely simple. So if we want the snare drum to become more dominant in the track, what you do is you contour out the snare drum where it has its peaks. For instance, here, and right next to it. If you hold down Alt, by the way, you can change the Q, so it's a little bit easier to contour it out, to draw it out. Okay, so let's just get a little bit more going. You can go as specific as you want, and there's a nice little hump there, so let's just do that as well. There's one more little thing here at 1K. Okay, so it sounds nice and weird. So we have that EQ8 here now, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut that out. So we're going to Command X, Control X, cut it out, drop it on the snare, on the hi-hat, because the hi-hat was in the way of the snare drum. And here comes the super duper trick. You go to the scale knob and you just bring down the scale. And you'll see that slowly, I'm going to go a little bit faster, you can flip the EQ. So where you have the snare being really dominant in these peaks, you take those sounds away from the hi-hat, and then you get a pronounced sound in those frequencies. So before, after. Okay, the hi-hat is extremely peaky there. So let's get a different hi-hat. Just get that a little bit more prominent. I'll use an open one. Let's just use that. Okay. Okay, so you can definitely hear a little volume duck there. Now, if you want to make that even more pronounced, what you can do is, instead of cutting your EQ from your snare drum, you can leave it there and leave these pronounced things up. So you get this instead. Let me just again do this so I can show you an A/B. So instead of this, and now the snare drum comes to the front, and we didn't really do that much with volume, you know, so yeah, there's an overall volume change, but the volume change is specifically to those frequencies. Now let's also do that to the kick drum. All right, so on the kick drum itself, we're going to take the EQ8 again, do it one more time here. And let's just contour it out. So there's a nice big thump here at 40 hertz. Okay, and one over here right next to it. Cool. And again, you can go as crazy as you want. I'm going to go a little bit faster now. Okay, so I'm okay with that. We don't really need too much more than that. Right, there we go. We take that EQ as well. Let's just copy that, so we'll leave it to be accentuated. Drop that on the snare. Take these frequencies and turn it down. Also, you can just select this if you like and turn down the gain knob like this. Let's listen to everything together in a larger context. And let me just Command K this, so you have a before and after. Before, pretty grim. So you can hear that it slowly it's coming together, right? So the sound is becoming more clinical. This hi-hat is absolutely horrid though. I'm just going to copy this over there and double down on it. Oh man, that is just a frequency that I can't stand. Okay, cool. So we just keep it like that. So again, with a grain of salt, all right? So now that we have this frequency masking tackled, this is obviously an easy example, but you can also use multi-band dynamics and then start doing sidechaining. Now that's a little bit insane by itself, but it's quite easy to understand. Let's just take a Production Music Live loop from the, what's it called? Well, Deep Premium. And we'll just get these house loops, and let's take this one, because I don't know what it sounds like. Cool, it sounds brilliant. Just going to delete these for a second. That's nice, isn't it? So let's just get some multi-band dynamics in here. And let's say that on this multi-band dynamics, we are going to be sidechaining a snare drum. So let's get a drum rack again. Get a snare drum from Production Music Live. And we'll get a snare drum. Let's just get a clap. Great. We'll just get that. Drop that on the 2 and the 4. And then we have this. Now let's, for some strange reason, say that I want that clap to become even more dominant in that little loop. What we can do is click here, click on the sidechain knob, and let's say that we only want this snare drum to come through in the middle frequency, so these. That's where I want the snare drum to be predominant, and I want all these middle frequencies to kind of make room for this. So what we're in effect are getting is a ducking of that frequency specifically for the snare drum. All right, so we sidechain it with the drum rack, and then as you can see, my mouse, when I put it on here, it actually changes to a little up and down arrow. And what you can do is when you go up, you'll expand. When you go down, you will cut it. And let's make this a little bit more heavy. Okay, so let's just take it down. And then, as you've noticed, when I put this up, it becomes a heavier amount of compression of sidechaining. But there's also this really cool part that you can do. You can also expand it. So instead of sidechaining it to duck sounds away, we can expand it so that the sound afterwards is going to be a little bit heavier. So again, with great power comes great responsibility, because with this multi-band dynamic sidechaining functions, you can really start doing some insane things. Now let me show you where in real life I use this kind of effects, and I did this for the course that I did for Production Music Live. You can probably find a link below, and in that course, it's about 6 hours long. there is also a part of frequency masking specifically to that analog house track. I don't have this Facebook spatializer anymore because I don't have it and I'm on a different computer. Let me just go to that Facebook spatializer track and turn that down. Now, in this massive track made by the ever so talented Production Music Live guys, we have an area where you have a lot of harmonics being played, which is here. And it sounds like this. Let's get it to kick in. Okay, so if you're interested in that, check out the description below and you'll find it for the whole track. But when I open up the Rhodes replaced with actual Rhodes VST, I found this. There's this minus 59%, and I know that I'm one of the only ones that does that little trick, so I know that I put that EQ there. And this was being, this was moving some tracks out of the way of the, I think it was the low notes that were in the way of this track, because these Rhodes are long notes, and there were some other long notes being played, and I needed the other notes to come out in front because they were giving some extra nice air in it. Anyway, let's have a before and after with that EQ8. So with it turned on, this is, by the way, this mixing and mastering course is quite detailed. So with it turned on and subtle at the same time, with it turned on, the Rhodes were coming out a little bit too much in the mix, and well, with it turned off, it was coming out a little bit too much, and with it turned on, it was just settled in. I don't really remember what I was masking or checking the masking with. Now that's it. If you're interested in that course, go check that out. If you're interested in more mixing and mastering, you can also check out my channel. That's always fun to do as well. And for the rest, have a lovely Sunday. I will see you guys again in 2 weeks with a different topic. If you guys have any suggestions for topic, mixing and mastering related, or sound design or anything like that, just put it in the comment section below, and we'll have a look and see if we can make a video on that. Take care, have a lovely Sunday and a lovely week.